Madam President, I want to discuss today several amendments I have to the Farm Bill that's now before the Senate. What might surprise many people to learn is that the overwhelming majority of funds in the Farm Bill are not spent on anything to do with farmers or even agriculture production. For instance, crop insurance amounts to just, which is a big part of the new bill and is progress, I think. The crop insurance provisions amount to just 8% of what we'd be spending. Horticulture is less than 1%, but a full 80% of the Farm Bill spending goes to the federal food stamp program. Yet 83% of the small savings that are found in this proposal come from that. $23 billion in cuts, none of which occur next year, out of almost $1 trillion in spending over 10 years, are taken, over almost $1 trillion are taken from the farm provisions. So about $23 billion in cuts, most of that are taken from the farm provisions, the 20% that goes to that. Food stamp spending is virtually untouched. I believe they propose $4 billion in savings in the 80% in the food stamp program, and only in $17 billion out of the 20%. So overall, the legislation will spend $82 billion on food stamps next year, $82 billion, and an estimated $770 billion over the next 10 years. So to put these figures in perspective, and they're so large it's difficult to comprehend, we will spend next year $40 billion on the federal highway program, but $80 on the food stamp program. Food stamp spending has more than quadrupled, 4 times. It's increased fourfold since the year 2001. It has increased 100% since President Obama took office, doubled in just that amount of time. There are a number of reasons for this arresting trend. While poor economy has undeniably increased the number of people who qualify for food stamps, this alone does not explain the extraordinary growth in the program. For instance, between 2001 and 2006, food stamp spending doubled, but the unemployment rate remained around 5%. So from 2001 to 2006, we had a doubling of food stamp while unemployment is the same. When the food stamp program was first expanded nationwide, about 1 in 50 Americans received food stamp benefits. Today, nearly 1 in 7 receive food stamp benefits. We need to think about that. This is a very significant event. We need to ask ourselves, is this good policy? Is it good for America? Not only is it a question of, do we have the money? The second thing is it going to the right people? Is the money being expended wisely? Is it helping people become independent? Is it encouraging people to look for ways to be productive and be responsible themselves for their families? Or does it create dependency, part of a series of government programs that in effect aren't beneficial to the people who actually benefit from them in the short term? 3 factors help explain this increase. First is that eligibility standards have been significantly loosened over time, with dramatic drop in eligibility standards in the last few years. Second, it has been the explicit policy goal of the federal bureaucracy to increase the number of people on food stamps. Bonus pay is even offered to states who sign more people up. States administer this program. And third, the way the system is arranged with states administering their program, but the federal government providing all the money, all of it. States don't match food stamps. States have an incentive, don't you see, to see their food stamps budget grow, not shrink, because it's more federal money coming into the state for which they have which they pay no part of. So that means overlooking, I'm afraid, I hate to say, dramatic amounts of fraud and abuse, because the enforcement and supervision is given over to the states. So I filed a modest package of food stamp reforms to the Farm Bill, which will achieve several important goals. Save taxpayers dollars, which is a good thing, reduce the deficit, achieve greater accountability in how the program is administered, confront widespread waste, direct food stamps to those who truly need them, and help more Americans achieve financial independence. Now, I guess I'm the only person in the Senate who's ever dealt with fraud in the food stamp program. When I first, shortly after law school, and I was a young federal prosecutor, I prosecuted fraud in the food stamp program. And later I came back as United States Attorney, and we saw drug dealers selling food stamps. We saw various other manipulations of it. As Attorney General of Alabama for a period, I was involved in enforcing integrity in the program. So I know the benefits food stamps play to people in desperate need. I know it's helpful, but I know, Americans know, they see it every day, that there are abuses in this program. It's the fastest growing entitlement program, bar none. And we need to look at it. And I understand there's some that oppose even saving $4 billion over 10 years out of the food stamp program. We're spending $80 a year. Just 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we were spending $40. We can't do better than that. So it's now food stamps is the second largest federal welfare program following Medicaid. And the food stamp spending were returned next year. Just if we next year were to go back to the 2007 funding levels, and you agree to increase it for 10 years at the rate of inflation, that would produce an astonishing $340 billion in savings to the United States Treasury. And we've got to have some savings because we don't have the money to continue spending at the rate we are. Food stamps are one of 17 federal nutritional support programs and one of nearly 80 federal welfare programs. So there's no confusion. These figures count only low-income support programs. So there's no confusion. These figures count only low-income support programs, and they don't include Medicare, Social Security, or unemployment benefits. Collectively, our federal welfare programs constitute about $700 billion in federal spending and $200 billion in state contributions to the same programs. Well, that's about $900 billion on federal-state combined programs, most of it federal. $900 billion is about 1/4 of the entire federal budget. So an individual on food stamps may receive as much as $25,000 in various forms of financial assistance for their households from the federal government, as much as $25,000, in addition to whatever salary they may earn, part-time work or full-time work, and any support they may receive from their family or community. So, in other words, this is not normally the only source of income for a person. Changes in eligibility have been eliminated, changes in eligibility for food stamps have eliminated the asset test for food stamp benefits, which brings me to the first of 4 amendments I've filed. Number 1, let's restore the asset test for food stamps like it always was. This change has been quite significant. Through a system known as categorical eligibility, states can provide benefits to those whose assets exceed the statutory asset limit, as long as they receive some other federal program. Why is this? I don't know. It makes no sense to me. So if you qualify for another program, you automatically get food stamps. Categorically, you're eligible to get them. One state went so far as to determine that individuals were food stamp eligible solely because they received a brochure from another benefit program in the mail. Well, that meant there's more money from the federal government coming into their state, more benefit. I guess they see it as an economic benefit. Didn't cost them any money. Money came from Washington. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the simple process of going back and restricting the categorical eligibility problem that's now springing up would produce $12 billion in savings for taxpayers over the next 10 years and should not eliminate a single person who qualifies for food stamps. All it would mean is you don't get it if you qualify for something else, but if you qualify for food stamps and fill out the proper form, you get it, like everybody else has to do. Second, there is the heating subsidy loophole. 15 states are using a loophole in order to get more food stamp dollars from the federal government. They do this by mailing a very small check. Get this. They mail a small check, often less than $1 a month, under the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, the LIHEAP program. And anyone who receives that check, which may be as little as a few dollars a year, becomes eligible to claim a lower income on the basis of home energy expenses, even if they don't pay those expenses. So this reform will require households that receive food stamps to provide proof of payment for their heating or cooling in order to qualify for the deduction. If the government is paying for your heating, you shouldn't say, I need food stamps because I've got a big heating bill, if the government's paying for it. But this clever maneuver, designed by states, frankly, deliberately, to extract more money from Washington, free money for their states, is not good policy for America. And it's not right that some states get more under the food stamp programs by using this technique than other states who don't use this abusive practice. So closing this loophole will produce $14 billion in savings over the next 10 years. And that's a lot of money. Number 3, let's end the bonuses, the bonus payments that are going to states for increasing the number of people who sign up. We ought to be giving bonuses to states who identify people who are abusing the program and bringing those down. If anything, states currently receive a bonus payment for enrolling individuals in the program. Those bonus payments highlight the perverse incentive states have to expand food stamp registration rather than to reduce fraud and help more people achieve financial independence. We need to be focusing on helping get people to work, to being productive, bringing in far more money for their families than food stamps would bring in. That's the focus of American vitality and growth. So that's number 3. Number 4, let's implement the E-Verify program for food stamp usage. This amendment would simply require the government to use a very simple E-Verify program to assure that adults receiving benefits are in fact lawfully in the country. This is a common sense thing to do at a time when we have to borrow 40 cents of every dollar we spend in this government. We spend $3,700 billion. We take in $2,300, $400 billion. We borrow the rest every year. We can't afford to be providing incentives, benefits, bonuses, and payments to reward people who've entered the country illegally. We just don't have the money. Ultimately, beyond first steps, the best way to achieve integrity in the food stamp program is to block grant it to states. Just send so much of the program, a fair percentage, to each state and let them distribute it. This will provide states with a strong incentive to make sure that each dollar is being appropriately spent. They don't have that incentive today. It's no damage to a state if somebody is getting the money improperly or getting more than they are entitled to. But if a state is administering the program and some people are getting too much and other people are not getting enough, then the state has an incentive to make sure the abuses stop and the aid goes to the people who really need it. And that's the kind of program we need in America, one that works, that has incentives built in to make the program have integrity. The House budget adopts this reform. They like to complain about the House and say the House doesn't know what they're doing. This is a common sense reform. I'm proud of what the House did. They did exactly the right thing. Senate Democrats, of course, have not even written a budget in 3 years. So it would become clear if we'd gone through a financial analysis, a budget debate in this Congress, that we could save a lot of money by ending the abuses in the food stamp program, and it would help us do other things the government needs to do. So it would also become clear that we will run out of money to pay for this program if we don't make changes. Now, we are in a financial situation that's so grave, as every expert has told us, we are on an unsustainable path, and we got to get off of it. And if we don't, we could have another financial catastrophe, like we did in 2007, like they're having in Europe today. That is very possible. So we've got to reduce our deficits, and we've got to reduce abusive spending. Reforming the way we deliver welfare is the compassionate course. It's not mean-spirited to say that people who are not entitled to the benefits, don't need the benefits, should not get them. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having incentives in your program, not to see how many people you can put on food stamps, but to see how many people we can get to work and be productive and create jobs. The result of welfare reform in 1996, if you remember that, and many of you do, was less poverty, more growth, less teen pregnancy, more work, and more people successfully caring for themselves. And we slipped back, in my opinion. We moved back from some of the progress we made in the 1996 provisions. So unfortunately, since '96, members in both parties have failed to protect these gains. The welfare budget has swelled dramatically, oversight has diminished, standards have slipped, so we now find ourselves in need of welfare reform for the 21st century. We just do. It's the nature of any business, any government, that programs once established continue beyond rationality and need to be reformed periodically. So it's time to re-engage the national discussion over how the receipt of welfare benefits can become damaging, not merely to the Treasury, but also to the recipient. Left unattended, the safety net can become a restraint, permanently removing people from the workforce, and federal programs, unmonitored, that can begin to replace family, church, community as a source of aid and support. We need to reestablish the moral principle that federal welfare should be seen as temporary assistance, not permanent support. The goal should be to help people become independent, self-sufficient. Such reforms, made sincerely and with concern for those in need, will improve America's social, physical, and economic health. Empowering the individual is more than sound policy. It remains the animating moral idea behind the American experience. Our national exceptionalism We believe in individual responsibility. We believe in helping people in need, but we don't believe in creating circumstances where decent, hardworking people who work extra, who save their money, who give up vacations and going out to eat so they can take care of their family, are also required to support people who are irresponsible. That's not a healthy situation for us to be in. So we need to strike the right balance. We help those people in need and create a government and a social assistance program in America that benefits the people we seek to benefit and benefit the United States Treasury at the same time. Mr. President, I appreciate the opportunity to share these remarks and will yield the floor.